Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's final instalment of SVA Online and Coach Connections. It's been an absolutely amazing month, and tonight is our final Coach Connections. So, joining me this evening for a conversation is none other than Joel Banks. He is head coach of Mosaic in Belgium and a club side, and the head coach of Finland. So he's sitting backstage with the SVA guys. We're going to get him out here. So let's have Joel Banks. Good evening, Joel. Welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight. How are you?
Thank you. Yeah, very good. All okay. I'm in Finland, busy with national team stuff. So thanks for the invitation.
Perfect, mate. Listen, we had a conversation earlier this month, and I highlighted why we were wanting to bring you on and what the purpose of this series was. So when we get an opportunity to celebrate coaches that are from our shows, we're going to take it. So let's just recap where you've been in terms of your volleyball journey. Now, we met years ago, a wonderful camp at High Peaks.
Yeah.
Light years away from where you're at now. How the heck did you end up where you are, sir?
Yes, indeed, you're right. I remember those good days. England juniors, GB juniors, the summer camps in High Peaks. Fond memories. It does indeed seem like a different lifetime, doesn't it? I just basically grew up with volleyball in the UK. I just fell in love with the sport. My idea when I started playing volleyball at school at 13 years old was that once I realised you could be a pro player, that was my goal, really. And that just inspired me to try and make a go of it. And that took me from my local team in Purbrook, Portsmouth, up to London Mallory, through sort of England junior ranks with the coaching staff there, through to the seniors, GB stuff. And then once I graduated from uni, from the Sport Sheffield project, as was, I just wanted to go abroad and try and play pro. I did that for a couple of years with varying degrees of success, I have to say. But that just really opened my eyes about, okay, this is professional volleyball. And although perhaps my experience with pro volleyball wasn't what I'd hoped it would have been, I sort of found that perhaps being a coach or coaching would be something more for me. So there's this sort of cliche that says those that can't do coach. I don't know if that's exactly true or not, but that's something that volleyball is my passion. After having a short-lived professional playing career, it took me into coaching, and that's something I absolutely adore with a passion. So
amazing. So straight away you played pro. You then made that transition to the sideline. How did you find that? I mean, a lot of players who maybe don't play pro but play amateur aren't making that transition. So how did you find that, and what was the challenges of that for you?
It's a good question. When I first went to Belgium, to be quite honest, I was a young guy coming out of university, and I didn't really care where I could go as long as I could play professional volleyball. I was so keen and so eager, and I got an opportunity to go and play a second setter in a team in Belgium, and I bit the hand off. I wanted to do it, and I was very fortunate. I had a good friend of mine, Stephen Fee, that I'd played with in the UK, that we went together, and we went there with sort of stars in our eyes, not so much about the financial side, but more about the chance just to live and work as a professional volleyballer at a good level. And I have to say that experience was sort of topsy-turvy, really. By moments it was really good, and by other moments it was really poor. And there were many things that perhaps we thought, and I thought, it would be a certain way, certain levels of expectations, certain level of professionalism. But the level that I was playing at in the professional clubs in the top league back then, sort of 25 years ago, sort of quashed some of those sort of ideas that I'd put up on a pedestal. So I had sort of mixed experience, really, of 3 years as a pro player, and then sort of fell out of love with the fact that it wasn't perhaps what it was that I'd hoped it would be. That said, in the meantime, met my girlfriend, who's now my wife. Settled down a little bit, got a little bit just into a nice rhythm, sort of family rhythm, but also less volleyball. And then just suddenly decided, okay, you know what, I'm going to try some coaching at a low level, and did my coaching badges, started at provincial level, and worked my way up. And that was sort of early 2000s. And then my big step came up when I was invited to be assistant coach for Team GB in 2006, 2007. for the British program that was set up working towards London in 2012.
Amazing experience. Amazing experience. So earlier in the series, we had Simon Loftus. Lofty spoke about how he was persistent. He was like a fly that didn't go away. He just emailed Harry, "Is it all right if I come and watch?" And he never left. He just kept going and going and going, and that's how he ended up being involved with the program. Yeah. For you, that journey was a little bit different, I suspect. You were brought in right at the start. So what were the kind of things that you were doing in that sort of phase? Because obviously 2006 is still a long way out from those games in London.
Yeah, I can see where Lofty's coming from, and that's something that I would advise any coach or anyone with the ambition is what you said. Just be persistent, and that's what I tried as well. Previous to getting the contact from the BVF, I'd been really focusing on how do I make this step. So I was coaching pretty much every night of the week at quite a low level, primarily on the men's side. I did one season where I was coaching men and women, 2 different clubs. Just trying to be busy with volleyball every night of the week and the weekends, going to the coaching courses, trying to pick up any kind of knowledge, but also to network. And I was really scratching my head thinking, how do I make the step from being an average ex-professional player with a couple of years of experience to doing my badges, to making the step up from sort of provincial and national level to try and get up to the professional ranks. And I remember I phoned Vital Heine, who was the ex-setter of Mosaic, who's now world-renowned performance coach, world champion with Poland. He's been medalist with Germany as well. And at the time, he was a head coach just starting up in Mosaic. And I had the same sort of conversation that Lofty had with Harry Brockin, I had with Vital, which is like, listen, I'm mega keen. How can I help? How can I get involved? And unfortunately, there wasn't really an opening for me. So I was sort of a bit stuck, like, okay, how do I make that step? And it was really difficult to try and find the way to break into that world. I didn't have a name as a player. I had a relatively limited network, being a foreign professional foreign player in Belgium. Again, you always run into sort of there's no volleyball in England, or there's no volleyball in Britain, and don't you guys just play football and rugby? And you had to work a little bit against that sort of opinion, let's say. And then I got the call to be involved with the British program because I was one of the few guys that had been away and got a bit of international club level experience. And at that stage, I've been coaching sort of 4 or 5 years. And that was the big break that I wanted. That was my chance to step into that world with a program, which I was obviously very passionate about, being a Brit. Yeah. But also, I have to say that the chance to work from, let's say, the bottom up in terms of when we started with that program, it was almost starting from scratch. There was no British team at that point. A lot of work behind the scenes to try and get set up by the home nation coaches to get things established and get it moving. And when I stepped in pretty much at inception, it was a great eye-opener to work with Harry to see, okay, how does he work? He was a guy who was experienced. I was starting out. And how do you build that program up? And that's something that I thought was invaluable, really.
Yeah, you've obviously taken those lessons and really ran with them, Joel. So if you looked at that time with Harry in that program, is there maybe 2 or 3 wee gems that you would sit there and go, yeah, that's it. That's what I need. These are the things that I'm going to take away from this, because everybody does that. Everybody looks at coach and says, "Wow, that's something." So, what are the takeaways from that experience for you?
I think when I arrived to work with Harry, I've always tried, and that's something that I picked up from Jefferson. That you can always pick up something from any coach that you work with. It may click with that person, it may not click. You may think that they know their stuff, they don't know their stuff, but there's always something you can take away. Something that you would embrace, something that you would definitely go the opposite direction from. And I always try to take that into my coaching sessions, into my interaction with other coaches. And when I started working with Harry, yeah, of course, you're in a full-time program, suddenly 2 a day sessions. It's the only thing you have to do. It's a paid living, so you get your full attention and you have the time. That's a key thing, I think. And one message that's always stood with me was with Harry saying, don't be afraid to repeat. What he meant was basically that you just got to make the repetitions. You've got to try and make the steps one at a time, slowly, try and stretch the limit, try and go faster. But the bottom line is you're going to have to repeat the message and repeat the work and build a foundation. So that was something that stuck with me. The other thing would be that one of his phrases was really that there is no magic formula. That what he was basically getting at was you can glitz it up and you can sugarcoat it as much as you want and use different terminology and different ideas. But the bottom line is you've got to do the hard work. You've got to do the meat and potatoes, really the core work, and that is daily practice, the power training, the skills training, the technical training. That you need to put the hours in. You need a full-time program. You've got to put the time in, and those were the two things that when I went into that environment, the majority of my playing career in the UK, there'd never been a full-time program. Like you said, we'd enjoyed a camp at High Peaks. That was our sort of taste of life as a professional, 2 sessions a day and don't have to think about anything apart from volleyball. Then I went to Belgium where we trained, but it wasn't really that professional. We were in the top league, but it was 1 session a day or sometimes 2. But the ability to be in an environment where your sole focus is volleyball, well, that's a luxury. And that's something that I've been very fortunate to have. And those 2 messages have really stuck with me, even till today. Sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees. And you need to go back and look yourself in the mirror and deliberate a little bit about maybe this decision, that decision, what kind of practice we're doing, the results that we're getting. But those things come back, and there's no magic formula. Like, you need to do the hard work and don't be afraid to repeat and go back over it. So
you've got that step, you've got that break, the thing that you've been looking for.
Yeah.
How did you then? You've got it, your bit. How did you then make that transition to where the next step? What was the next step, and how did you make that? Because obviously you've done something really fantastic with the Olympics. What came next?
Yeah, what became quite clear was that the opportunity to work in a full-time program was massive because there aren't that many jobs about. The opportunity to work with an experienced coach that had been through that process with Holland back in the late 80s and early 90s as assistant and as head coach was invaluable. The opportunity to learn, like I said, from the bottom up. And I've done everything from trying to do the scouting to washing the kit to making the warm-up to pumping up the balls to ordering the shoes, as my friend Mark McGivern will never let me forget about ordering these blooming shoes. I literally did everything, and I loved it. When I started in Holland, no job was too small. This was my chance, and I threw myself in there fully because I thought, okay, you can learn, you can try and do everything. So there's a bit of program management, bit of PR, bit of communication, coaching, whatever it was. And through that process, we ended up where Harry left and went to a club team in Greece during the winter, and I was offered the opportunity to take over the development group in the winter, which again was great because it was a chance to be a head coach and to run your own program. It was overseen by Harry, but I had quite a bit of flexibility there. And then as things progressed, if I remember correctly, there was some limitations on the program because of the finances going closer to the Olympics. Always. And I was fortunate enough to put my CV out there and to find a club team in Holland. That was through a particular manager, and things moved quite quickly. And basically, it was because I was young and ambitious, and we'd been in Holland a year or 2 before with Martinez project with GB. Yeah. And then they were starting up where they said, okay, we don't have a huge budget, but we can train twice a day, and we want to work professionally. So what we don't have to buy big and complete players, we'll give you the opportunity to have a smaller squad of 10 players, but you can work professionally. And I took that because it was in Holland. I could speak the language. It was my first step out into the professional world as a head coach. So I did 2 years with Langhenkel Volley in Holland. My first year, I had Joel Miller, Ben Pipes, Oliver Kimber with me from the British program. Yep. A couple of Australian internationals and a couple of Dutch internationals. Worked with a young group and tried to make those steps. So perfect from McGivern, right on time.
Right on cue, Mr. McGivern.
Yeah, brilliant. That will go with me to my grave, I think. So yeah.
Oh,
so yeah, that was it. Really. So first with the British program, assistant coach, learn from the bottom up, do every job, try and learn and have your eyes open and just soak it all in. Then the chance to go to a pro team and work as a professional, all the responsibility that comes with it, and to try and build that program. And it was tough. It was tough. The first year was a bit touch and go, but just keep going with it. Keep going with the messages. Keep thinking about how to develop. And my first year, we ended up, I think we were second. We ended up runner up in the championship. And the second year, we won. We won the Super Cup and we won the league. So It was a 2-year plan. It was great fun, and that was also my big start in club volleyball.
Brilliant. Now you've got that progress there. You've went 2 years. You talked about the plan. What sort of things are going through your head when you're thinking, right, I need to build a program. I know where I want to be. How do I get these guys to get on board and come with me on this journey? What's your strategy when you take, particularly when you're taking over a new program, Joel?
Yeah. There's a couple of easy answers. I think one is that you start out as a young coach and you're perhaps a bit idealistic. So you want guys to buy in for the right reasons, to be young, to be ambitious, to fight and to train and to improve and to really want to do well for the club. And the other part is money, and the other part is credibility. If you've got the biggest budget, you can buy the best players that want to play in that competition. And that fact remains the same today. The other part is the credibility, like how credible are you as coach and how interested are those players to come and train with a British guy who's assistant coach from the British program that at the time didn't really have any results and wasn't particularly established on the European stage. So from some guys, was it a bit of a gamble? And that was certainly year 1 into year 2 in Holland. There were guys that were very reluctant to come and sign with the club because they were a bit suspicious about my coaching, about the program, about how was it going to work out. We didn't have a huge amount of money to convince them with a sweetener and give them a bit more wages. So we tried to find guys that were ambitious, wanted to work, and that were probably not the finished article, but with the right environment and the right buy-in that we could work together and try and make those steps. And I think we did that. I think there's no doubt that the second year, because we did well in the first year over through the process, that word got out and we sort of started to show what our brand was all about. And that sort of idea about the working mentality, the brand, what we stand for, that's something that I've certainly taken through my coaching career as it is into Greenyard Mosaic. That's something that I really believe in now, because it's a better version of the program in Holland, but we have many of the similar challenges.
Yeah. So when you then take that program and you've got that wheel turning and you've got people there and you start to realize, hey, we're on the verge of something, people start to take notice. What's that like? People wanting to then come in and see, oh, I fancy this. Does that happen? Players, coaches?
Yeah, it does. In my first year in Holland, before Christmas, we lost 5 games 3-2 after leading 2-0. And that's the kind of results that get the coach the hook, right? So I'm looking over my shoulder thinking, this, like, why? Basically, what are we doing? What am I missing? Where are we? And essentially, I count myself very fortunate that the manager and in particular the technical director stood behind me. And I was a bit dumbfounded from time to time, a bit down. I was racking my brains thinking, okay, what am I missing? What can we improve? What do we change? And they just stood behind me saying, listen, we're on the right track. It's a process. Hank, stay with it. We're behind you. Thankfully, I never got the dreaded vote of confidence. But that was something where you needed time. You need time to get your message over. You need time to work. There is no quick magic solution. You've got to do the work and you've got to build up. And okay, now I'm it's 10 years further, and looking back, I would have done a couple of things differently, right enough, with the experience that I have now. But I think that slowly but surely the players talk with each other, word gets out, and where you're perhaps a bit the laughing stock the first half of the season because this new project with a new coach, training twice a day, new team, losing all the matches, struggling, to then suddenly being in good condition, winning, peaking at the right moment. So we really looked to peak towards the playoffs, and I think we finished 4th in the regular competition, and then we went and knocked out the first place team that hadn't lost all season. We beat them in a best of 5 in the playoff semi to get to the finals, and that was the point where it turned everyone's heads. Like, how the hell have you just accomplished this after really having a difficult start to the season against a team that's been pretty much untouchable? That was the moment when words sort of got out, like this group of young guns, look how well they're playing and look how much of a team they are. And that's where our next year's recruitment was a lot easier, because you had that, you'd established something and people could look at that as tangible, look at where we started, look at where we finished. And I took the idea that I was going to phone players directly. So I often phone directly with a player if I'm interested to recruit them. Don't go via the technical director or via the club. Don't go via the manager as a starting point. Speak to the player, because you also want to know what they're like. They might look like a good player, but you want to see if they're going to fit into your jigsaw puzzle.
So we had a similar conversation. Our last connection was with Coach Steve Florio, who runs a NCAA Division 1 program, and that's what he was saying. Often, what they'll do is they'll not take a player based on numbers and performance. They'll take the player based on the fit that they have with the ethos of the team and the work ethic. So, I mean, that's interesting. There's two things I want to drill down on in this sort of thread that we've got going here, Joe. Pressure. How did you handle both the pressure of being that fledgling coach that nobody knows, and then also that fledgling coach who's now kicking butt and winning and dealing with that pressure? Because come that winning and moulding that team comes expectation. So how do you deal with the pressure?
Yeah, I think I'm very fortunate that I've got a very loving and very understanding wife who's been there with me every step of the way, good and bad, good days, bad days, moaning, complaining, bitching, all the stuff that the players don't see, but when you go home. I would never underestimate the drive home. I think that not living directly next door to the sports, or whether that's a 10-minute drive or a half an hour drive, can be invaluable to get a little bit of perspective after what's been a tough day or a tough period, because we all have them. Having someone to share it with, and I had a couple of people initially a lot of contact with my power trainer, a guy called Hein McNack, who I've love him to bits. He's like my big brother, and at those difficult moments, he was one of the guys that really stepped up and made the phone calls and just checking in, see how it's going, and the stuff that you learn to appreciate, because you need that. Everyone needs a little bit of a sounding board, a little bit of confidence, a little bit of energy from time to time. Bottom line is, I like that challenge. I don't like losing, hate losing, but I like this environment, and it's where I'm meant to be. So when you get backed into a corner and when you are struggling, which it happens, you got to stand up, look yourself in the mirror, and figure out how you're going to fix it. And that's something that it's a process, but I relish that challenge, and I've had it now 3, 4, 5 different times. Starting in Orion, starting in the British program, we lost everything. Starting in Orion, we were struggling. Starting with Mosaic, we also got off to a rocky start when I started there. And then last year with Team Finland, the same. We had a very, very difficult start. And dealing with the pressure, I think firstly, you've got to look at your process. Have you done everything you could do? Are you satisfied with your plan? Are there things that you're prepared to change? Because maybe you see something different at the moment than what you'd prepared for. Speak to your players. Don't be afraid to talk to your players and see how they're feeling, how they're reacting, because pressure does things with people. It does something with the coach. It does something with the players. The weight of expectation is always there. But I also think there's a certain performance pressure that you put on yourself, or you want to achieve. You want to be successful. None of us sign up to just have a go and see how we get on. We all want to win, right?
Yeah. We've got now. I'm renowned on these things, Joel, for butchering people's name. So your boy Mark, is it Plotcher? Played in the Olympic. Say that again.
Mark Plotticher, Samba. That's the guy.
Plotticher. Well, he sends his greetings from Brazil, but he's also said he's a little bit out of touch with the Scottish language, and that we might need to translate some of the stuff that we're talking about here. Apologies, Mark. We generally do talk fast. There's your boy talking to us from Brazil. Yeah. I mean, certain people really do relish that, and other people, react. And one of the common threads that we've got through this is this personal approach with your players. And like you said, don't be afraid to talk to them. So that brings us on to your sort of management style with your guys in the club, and then more towards the national team in Finland, the work there. What's your approach with your players? How do you work and manage with them to get the absolute best out of them?
Yeah, I think it's important to look at yourself. Like Absolutely love volleyball. Since I knew what volleyball was, I'm a volleyball geek. I watch all the matches. I watch God knows how much volleyball. I love it. Absolutely love it. And I'm not the best coach. I try and be the best coach I can be, and I'm still learning, and I'll always keep learning. But one thing that I think is a strength is my people skills, and that is something that I am very thorough about the way that I work. I'm very interested to learn new things for the sport and for the game. But one of my strengths has got to be how I interact with my players and speak with them, get to know them, try and find out how they tick, what works for them, and just generally try and get that man management. And I think that's something that if I had to choose where I have a particular, okay, let's say strength, I would say that's probably the number one.
Again, we're talking about a professional world, so language barrier.
Yeah.
How have you dealt with that? I know that you said you speak Dutch.
Yeah, pretty much.
So Belgian,
bit of Scottish, bit of English.
So you're dealing with, like, we're dealing with a range of players from different nationalities, different styles. I mean, that's a communication barrier. How do you challenge that?
Yeah, in Finland, very, very lucky that everyone speaks great English because Finnish, I've done my best to learn a few words, but it is unreal, like unbelievably difficult. I think I just about count to 3 and that's about it. But their grasp of English is really super, and the level of education is very high, so that's really in my advantage. In Mosaic, it's a different challenge because I speak Dutch, so Dutch and Flemish is like English and Scottish, the same language but with different accents and some different words, so it's very sort of comparable to that sort of situation. In Mosaic, we always have a large turnover of players. And traditionally we have a couple of Belgian guys, a couple of Dutch guys, and then we can have players from all over. We've had North American players, South American players. Last year we had a guy from Ukraine, the year before from Bulgaria, Germany, Chile, all over. So the spoken language is English in the club. The reason being is that we try very very openly to not have any cliques. It's logical that some players are going to get on with other players. It's going to click better than it does with others. But when we're in the gym, everything is in English. The swear words fly out left, right, and centre in everyone's own mother tongue, let's say. But no, we do quite a lot of effort there with the staff and with the group to try and bring that to the front. Also, where there are guys that they don't have a great grasp of English. So the Ukrainian guy last year, he made a huge effort when he came in. He only had a few words of English, but he'd done a lot of online stuff. He'd done a lot of extra tuition outside of his training hours to try and get a better grasp, which is all credit to him. But also it's an investment, right? Because, okay, in Italy, it's primarily Italian, Russia, Russian, but the rest of the world, everyone will speak English in the volleyball environment. So if you have a grasp of those 3 languages, you're going to get pretty far, I think, in the volleyball world. So I have the idea about this sort of open door policy. So I'd rather you come and speak to me, and if you're not comfortable speaking with me, my assistant coach is there or my team manager is there, because you've got something on your mind or you want to get it off your chest. Speak on it. Don't keep it inside. And that's from day one in the club. Let's speak. If you're not happy, generally with guys, why am I not playing, coach? Why am I not starting? Why'd you bring me off? It's better to have that conversation. You might not like the answer, and we can talk about it. And you're probably going to figure out that we're perhaps on a different page. But at least if we get it out in the open, then we can move on. And that's something that I really believe in. Irrespective of the language barrier, we can have those conversations.
Amazing. So we started to touch on your club stuff and the sort of national team program. Let's just dial back a little bit into the club, because Champions League. Did you ever dream that you'd be Champions League?
I got to be honest. I don't have a bucket list, but I've got some really lofty goals. And my idea is, like, why not? Like, I never thought I'd get a chance to go to the Olympics, but I did. I never thought I'd be. I said back in like late 2000s when I finished playing, I want to be a professional coach. And at the time, I think I was coaching in the evening and working in a call center as a native speaker, English. Hated every minute of it, but needed to have an income, and did that for, I think, 6-8 months, and coaching in the evening just to make it work. And at the time I thought, I'm going to do it. And like I said, tried everything. And said one day, okay, I want to coach Mosaic, and that was back in early 2000. And then in 2017, I get the opportunity to take over as head coach, and that was a dream come true, really. The chance to be a British coach in Europe on the world stage and coach a foreign national team, be head coach of Finland, is a huge honour and something that I'm very, very thankful for and very proud of. When I put that shirt on and stand there and they play the anthem, it's phenomenal. It's not my home country, but it's a massive honour to be invited to lead their troops into battle, and that's fantastic. And the same with Mosaic. It's a great club. I love it to bits there. I've just renewed for 2 more years. But Champions League is something special, isn't it? It's the creme de la creme. You play against top level players that you've seen on TV that have got Olympic medals, world champ medals. You play against coaches that have been there and done it, and then some. So it's just a great opportunity. And like I said, I love that challenge. It's difficult not to be a bit romantic about the Champions League, really, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's up there, pinnacle. So we talked about, I think we've talked about a lot of coaches, what COVID's done to, what we're doing. And pretty much, again, we had a conversation off screen about planning. And I think we talked to Karts and he said, when these things come, it gives you that change, that adaptation, that moment where you need to adapt. So what's been life like for you since this COVID? How's it changed? How have you got to manage programs and club and the national side? So just tell us a little bit about what coaching's been like just now during lockdown.
Well, I think first and foremost, despite being in a performance sport environment, you've got to look at your family and the well-being of your players and your staff and your friends and everything. So the first thing that came in was, this is serious. It's not just a problem that's somewhere on a foreign shore, and we've got to take our responsibility. That's absolute paramount. The second part is then your work life, your sports life. And when we came out of last summer with Team Finland, basically I had a 1+2 contract. So after the first year, there was a review and an appraisal moment, and we could stop or continue from both sides. So I could either choose, and so could they. Bottom line was, I said, listen, I'm all in. I'm not one to shy away from a challenge, but certain things need to change. There's 3 or 4 requests that I have that I really need the backing from the federation on. And it wasn't really financially. It was more about, we need to do more. If you look at the steps we need to take and where we are on the competitive international stage, we need to ramp up the volume and the loading for our program. Excuse me. And that's when I sort of set about what this summer would look like. And it wasn't anything too complicated. It was basically just how to get a bigger group working more with more coaches, build the program, get some competition for places, try and evolve the men's side of the program, and get down into sort of the number 3, 4, 5 setter, the number 4, 5, 6 outside hitter, this sort of position. So I had that program all programmed in as of sort of November, December. My power trainer and my CEO from the federation came over. We met in Mosaic. We put the program together, had a 2-day meeting, and I felt really confident that with this kind of thing in place, we just need to do more. We're gonna get a 3-court sports hall, and we're going to train for 8 weeks, and that's this sort of thing. Nothing, no frills. That's what we need to do. And then COVID comes in, and it's like, right, well, we can't do a lot of those things because of the guidelines and the measures that have been imposed by the government. There's issues with travel. So obviously me getting across, when can I get across? When will I be allowed to fly? And then more importantly, when will it be safe to practice? And when will everyone be okay to be able to start training? And then there's a big financial consequence, because the federation had some serious financial implications with the loss of tournaments and youth tournaments over the summer. So I was asked to downscale our program. And like colleague Karch says, you've got to look at the problem and try and find some solutions. We have to be inventive, creative. So we ended up doing a road trip whereby we couldn't get the group together for a number of reasons. So we said, okay, we're going to look at what we can do. So myself and the power coach, we've then made a road trip around Finland and gone and visited various men's clubs where they've been training, and they've invited the national team players that are in their region or in their province in to their power training and to their ball practice. And I've been lucky enough to go there and lead the training on most of the time, and to work with the club coaches. So although it's not the program that we wanted, it's been a great opportunity to meet the club coaches to speak with them about how are they doing, how's their program, how do they see national team and the cooperation, to be a lot more transparent with the conversations to have with those guys. And also, to be quite honest, to see a lot more players that you can watch the players on the video and you can do the scouting. And my assistant coach, who's based in Finland, he does a lot of the scouting over the winter, and I watch a lot of the matches from back in Belgium. But until you actually see those guys face to face, we've highlighted one or two guys that perhaps weren't in the picture during the winter. Now we've seen them close up, that we've invited them into camps. So we're going to start with the camps this month or next month, let's say July. So yeah, really sort of making a silver lining out of a big dark storm cloud to try and get around the clubs and make that link. That's been what we've done this period, and I think that there's a big thanks to the clubs and their engagement, because without those guys letting us utilize their sessions and their equipment, their halls and stuff, then we would have had a lot less practice this summer.
Okay, we've got a question. It's going to come up on. It's from John Scrimmager.
Swim.
So, swim. There you go. So he's asking, is the Finnish style of play different from Belgian, and how do you manage the team and tactics if it is? So from what you know to what you see there, I mean, is it volleyball is volleyball, or are there nuances that you're having to get your head around?
Yeah, absolutely. There's one huge difference, and that is in the club, you can buy players and try and buy the players that you want to fit in your puzzle with who you think will complement who. So, for example, you have a setter that likes to play a lot of first tempo. You need a middle spiker, not so much a middle blocker. That's one crude example. With national team, you have the players that have the passport. So you have the guys that are available. And in Finland, one of the challenges is, not unlike Belgium, is that there's not a great deal of male players playing the game. The level which they compete at varies from, let's say, champion of Russia or champion of Greece plus Liga level through to just playing in the home competition. So you need to do sort of like an assessment really of, in the club, how you're going to fit the pieces together and how you're going to complement your style of play. So you can have a vision, and then you look for players that fit that vision. But then when you do or don't recruit that kind of player, then you need to reframe and think again, okay, if we don't have that kind of receiver, then we need to think about this kind of attacker. We don't have that kind of setter, we need to play a different kind of game. With Finland, we need to see about how the players that we have, how can we get the absolute best out of them? So, for example, at the moment, a lot of our outside hitters have a very similar profile. They're very dynamic, they're very athletic, but their profile is sort of 190 to 194. So we've been looking at a style of game that we can play when we're in system and out of system that would complement at what we have, not trying to play like a Brazil or like a Russia or like Scotland or like England. Don't look at another team. Take some ideas from them and some skills and some philosophies, but what would work well for us. So that's something that with the club, you just go and buy different kinds of players within budget and who's available. And with Finland, it's like, right, okay, what do we have and how can we maximize that?
Yeah, I mean, managing a national team program with this road trip that you've been around the clubs, did it throw up any little hidden gems, people that you might never have came across, and you're sitting going, oh, this has actually been a blessing? Did you have that moment?
There's one guy in particular. I went into the gym, and this guy's like a tank. He's absolutely massive, and I'm thinking, how come I don't know you? So my first idea is, who's this guy, and how come I don't know about him? So I get chatting to the coach. He used to be quite heavy, quite chunky, but he was like ex-volleyball school, but then he sort of went down the divisions and played a bit more for fun, and now he wants to step back up and take life a bit more seriously, and he's been training with us, and he's lost some kilos, and he's getting in better shape. So I'm like, right, okay, he's a big boy, he's a big fella. So how come I never heard of him? Yeah, because he was playing like Division 2 the last 2 years. So okay, I'm looking a lot at like the first two leagues in Finland, and this lad was playing like Division 3, let's say, sort of the third level. So that's a guy who slipped under the radar. And then when you see him, okay, there's a lot of work to be done physically, but also skills-wise. But the bottom line is the guy's 2 meters and 7, and he can put his number over the net when he's blocking. So nice. He's 20 years old. So we got to look at this kid. Like, we don't have very many of those type of players. So you've got to give the lad a look. you've got to try and see how far you can help him develop, see what his motivation is. Because like we said, we've got a lot of guys that are very skillful with a particular profile, but they're very similar. We don't have that kind of player. So maybe that can offer us something different. That was one guy. And like I said, there's a few guys as well, and that's something that I also like you mentioned the comment from the university coach in the States, I think it was, about the mentality. Bottom line is, if you want to be a top level player, you need to have the profile. You need to have a certain profile. You need to have a certain athleticism. You need to have a certain mentality, physicality. But the difference between the top percent is this: you need to have a physical profile that allows you to compete in that position. There's no doubt about that. You can't only have small guys that jump 1.20 m, but the mentality and the over my dead body mentality and the burning desire to really get there, that is something that you pick up on that straight away. And there's one lad that I've picked up this summer to bring into the squad. I can't tell you how far he's going to go because it's the first time he's coming in, but he's a competitor and he's a worker and he's got a really, really great ethic. And I think he's definitely worth a longer look. It's worth bringing him into camp and to see how he goes against some of the more established players.
Amazing. So a little bird told me that you quite like your stats.
Yeah.
Quite a statistics-driven coach, Joel.
Yeah, I think you have to be these days. I think that for me, I'm jack of all trades and certainly not a master of one thing. I think that you need the people around you. Certainly at the mosaic level and the national team level, I have a scout man. He's a full-on scout guy, and they know it inside out and backwards. It's what they do, but you need to have a grasp of it these days. I think that the game has evolved with performance analysis and scouting that you need to have a grasp of it. So much your own game as your opponent's game, but you need to be able to follow it. Yeah.
So Sam's got a question on it. You picking that one up there? He's quite interested to know what stats are like and how you use that. So
most important statistic.
Yeah,
that's a good question. I can't really answer and give you like one. I think that in men's volleyball, one of the main foundations is serve and receive. So what is our serve quality against the reception quality of the opponent and vice versa? One thing I'm looking at is the opponent's side out with receive double positive, exclamative, and what the necessity is to really push on serve. Because obviously if the other team's side out is above a certain level, and again, I think every coach has their sort of checks and measures to where they need to be winning or at least competing. But certainly I think that the serve in the men's game is massive. And I think that the ability to take risk and to sustain pressure, even if you're going to miss a few, that it's serve and receive. If the ball gets close to the net and the setter is decent, side out percentage is through the roof. So to try and enhance your block defense, you've got to be looking at your ace error ratio and the quality of the side out according to the level of the reception. That's something that I'm looking at, Sam.
There you go. A fairly comprehensive answer to that question there, Sam. Yeah, so you said that you're looking at that key bit. You're encouraging your guys to really go for it in terms of service. Then, Joel, yeah. Do you have a blender service? Do you think that's good, or is it all heavy top spin, jump serve strategy?
We spend a lot of time on serve. Always have done in the club since I started in Mosaic. When I started working with Daniel Castellani, we did a lot of work with particularly with receive, a lot of work. And at the time, the Belgian competition game was dominated by Nak Roussela with great jump float serve, very, very quick, very low over the net, very few mistakes, and very good block defense. So the quality of the serving was linked to the quality of the block defense, and those things obviously go hand in hand. From my side, something that I brought in when I came to Mosaic was the toolbox of serves. You can win because you've got a power serve with velocity like Groza, like Leon, Juan Torena, where you can just serve so strong and so fast that the other team are going to have problems. But if you don't have that and you can't overwhelm them in power, then you need to have enough smarts. And I always say to the players about the toolbox of solutions they have in attack and the toolbox of serves they have to ask different questions of the receivers.
Yep.
So you can talk about hybrid or change-up serves going from spin toss to float or from float toss to spin, the ability to serve the ball from different start zones to different end zones. I think that the variety can also compensate if you don't have out-and-out velocity, big bomb serves.
Yeah. So we've got a question here from Jerry Ford, and obviously he's loving what we're doing. He's loving the conversation. So thanks, Jerry. With regard to the Finnish national team, what's the ratio of individual technical work to tactical and teamwork? What was that going to look like for you?
That's a really good question, Jerry. How you doing? I remember we saw each other a few years ago at a coaching conference. So thanks for the question. Yeah, I think it comes down to a matter of time. Certainly, last year when we had three main points of the summer, that was the Golden League, where I came in late. We had a long playoff series in Mosaic, and I came in late, and then we had to get straight into the Golden League. Then we had a build up to the Olympic qualifications down in China, and then we had a build up into the European Championships. So the build up was limited in the Golden League, medium for the Olympic qualification, but good for the European Championships. So at the time, I needed to get a team on the court that understood in big terms how I wanted to play. So it was more about, okay, make an assessment of how the guys can play volleyball. How is the level of our individual passing, defending, blocking? Then put a system in place, system for receive, system for serve, system for block defense, system for contra, so breakpoints, making breakpoints, and try and roll with that. So some tactics, but really a philosophy. This is how we want to play. This is our idea. Then when you've got more time, then I'll definitely advocate technical. The ability to control the ball in all elements is key. So before you go over into special tactics and special options in block and extreme options and extreme play, the ability to do the basics and control the ball in passing, to control the ball in attack, to be able to spike the ball to different zones on the court, to play with the block, to control the ball and keep the control over your side of the game is key. So if I could choose, I'm going to go for technical work as much as possible. And then I go to tactical, and then I go to team play. So every day in the club, we do those three elements. We start off with a technical part, a tactical part, and a team play part. But again, I have a luxury position because I train every afternoon 2.5 hours, and we have every morning a 2-hour session. So I have luxury that I can train a lot of hours, but I would certainly prioritize the technical over the other two.
Excellent. And see, we're talking about you being head coach. There's another questions are flooding in now, Joel. As a head coach, how are you able to then take your style and philosophy and input that into younger age programs? So if you're at the Finnish national team at the senior level, how's that filtering down? Is everybody playing in a similar vein so that they're transitioning in easy? Is there differences there? And the same for club. Like, if you're trying to produce players from a club level to bring them in rather than spend the big bucks on a contract, is everybody in an alignment with that pathway, or how's that working for you?
Yeah, I think if I quickly reflect on the work in Belgium, when I went to the Belgian volleyball school after a year at Leaf Academy following London Olympic Games, that was something where the head coach of the volleyball school, who at the time was also head coach of the men's national program, he wanted the coaches pool in the volleyball school to develop a playbook for each skill. So he basically wanted that everyone would chuck their 2 cents in to how we were going to coach boys and girls, the same and different nuances for every element. And that we spent time developing, because the coaches pool was coaches, assistant coaches from the men's line, from the women's line, juniors, seniors. So you had quite a lot of knowledge there, different ages, different experiences. And I think that was really useful as a starting point to what is the backbone of how we're going to teach the skills, also the technical, but also the tactical. So the phrases that we're going to use, the vocabulary we're going to use, the terminology we're going to use. And that was something that was built up when I first went there. And I remember that. And I take that as well from sort of, if you sort of study like the Special Forces, SAS, Navy SEALs, the ability to have really finely honed routines of this is how we address this situation, and that with one call sign or one word or one sign that we know exactly how we're going to execute. That's rather extreme, but that is one way to go for volleyball, because if we're going to make a particular choice or make a particular play, don't use 10 words when one word will do. So that we need to make sure we're all singing off the same hymn sheet. In the club, I've brought that into the club with the first team. So I have my playbook and my sort of way of working, where I've taken things from all the coaches that I've worked with and some of my own ideas as well, obviously. And a part of my contract is to hold some coaching seminars for our own in-house coaches. So the coaches that work in our club with Greenyard Mosaic, from the youth, the little ones, all the way through to the men's second team, etc. To give some knowledge and some ideas that they would hopefully find useful. With Finland, we're not quite there yet. My appointment was quite late last Easter time, sort of March, April time. Hit the ground running, heavy summer, new program, lots of holes that needed plugging and trying to get things up and running. But over the course of the winter, speaking with the development coach and the women's head coach and the CEO, this is certainly like the Belgian idea about from the top down, the men's side, the women's side, and working down through the volleyball school is something that we'd like to work towards, even if it's a watered down version. The idea of the volleyball school is to develop players and to build players for national team. Even if one or two guys come out every cycle, they should be equipped with a certain amount of base knowledge and base understanding that fits straight into the way that the senior team wants to play.
Amazing. I mean, there's loads of philosophies and styles and theories about this, but I think what you're trying to do is and look at planting seeds for maybe 2-3 years time to come along. There's a question that's came in just from the association, and it's quite an interesting one. Any insight in dealing with high number of errors during a timeout? Now, I want to know who has posted this one from the association. Because obviously somebody's heard you chatting during that timeout. Who was close enough to overhear you, Joel?
I don't know. I can't think back to which one that was. The Olympic qualification was hellish difficult, as I was probably having quite a bit of stress and was trying to stay calm. I think that the one thing I try and do, and I'm not sure I always get there, but in the cold light of day, is to give solutions. I think it's very easy as coach to see everything and to get blinded a little bit by, especially when you're under pressure and when the team is chasing the game or you're struggling, is to look at where the ship is shipping water, where you're leaking, and then how do we fix it? And it's too easy, and I think it's perhaps human nature to highlight the areas where things are going wrong. So we're struggling in passing, or we're hitting the ball out too much. Valid points, but I try being the operative word, all the way through to when I play volleyball with the kids in the backyard, to coaching the young ones, to coaching the seniors, give solutions. Try not to tell them what they shouldn't be doing. So we want to stop hitting the ball out. Yeah, okay. So you can say, okay, keep the ball in play, take less risk. It's about how you bring the message, but I try not to tell the players what I don't want them to do.
I mean, we had a similar conversation as well. A lot of people saying that I've hit the ball out. I know I've made a mistake. The last thing I need is the coach or the AC going, ploughing on that more pressure. Yeah. What they're trying to do is find the positive and the solution through conversation. The hard part of that, I mean, it's an absolute skill and craft, Joel, is using that 30 seconds.
It is. It's human nature, and if you're competitive, and I think like you asked before about making the transition from a player to a coach, and the reality is that you've got to learn to step back, and you're not playing the game. The players have to play. You need to prepare the team to the best of your ability, but when they cross the line and they go on there, your effect on the game is minimal. They go on there with the baggage, technically, tactically, physically, that you've worked on in whatever training period you've had. I think that the ability to be able to step back, take a breath, and try and find some perspective is really important. It's not always easy. It's human nature to get into it, especially if the game is close, especially when there's high stakes. And then again, like you said, 30 seconds. So it's about feeling what the team needs. Maybe the team needs a rocket because we are with our head in the clouds and we're stuck in the moment. Maybe we need to shake and we need to wake up. Maybe you need to be aggressive and to shake the team awake. Maybe the team is over revving and they just need to calm down. In which case, maybe you say very little. Maybe you pull one player away and just talk about one particular thing. That's where I think the man management comes in, and that's where I think again experience. What does the team need at that moment? And that's also, if you listen to all the coaches, some guys are always really going at it, and they have very high standards, but very, very demanding. And then the question is, like you said, at key moments, are they adding to the stress? Is that what they want to do? Is that just their way of communicating? Other coaches are so calm they're almost falling asleep, and you wonder, like, yeah, are you actually coaching? What information are you giving?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it depends really. I think that's perhaps the modern coach, that you need people around you that can bring the skills that you perhaps understand but don't have mastery of. For example, like we said, scouting or physical preparation. Those guys, that is their job, but you have an understanding of it, but they're the master. And the same here, like the ability to manage your staff and your players at that moment, irrespective of what you're feeling and how tense things are. That's coaching.
So Ali Jacks asked a question again. He's your men's national team at the moment. He's our head coach. He's asking, in terms of the players that you've got an idea for the Finnish squad, throughout the club season, what sort of contact do you have with those players, and what sort of influence do you have over their development when they're not with you, when they're back with their clubs? What sort of influence do you have? Because that I guess is going to be really key in terms of progress made.
Yeah, it's a very good question, and it's something that I sit on both sides of the fence on. Obviously, I am head coach of Finland, and I've got the best interests of my players at heart. And there's no getting away from the fact that the majority of work for their skill set, their physical, their volleyball, how they develop as players is done in the club season, because the sheer volume of work is a lot greater in the winter club season than it is in the summer national team season. That's the fact. But I also sit on the other side where I'm the club coach of Mosaic, and if I do a good job and I help my players develop and they buy into it, then we can hopefully be successful for Mosaic and win stuff. We can hopefully hit our goals, but in the back of their mind is that perhaps I can make it to national team, or if I'm in the national team, perhaps I can make it to be a starter, or perhaps I can go to the Olympics, or whatever their motivation might be. So you want to see those guys do well and develop to be successful for the club, but also to be successful when they go on to a national team. Reality is you have very, very little control in the winter. I follow all the matches. I follow it from a statistics point of view. So I get the games, I get the scouting. My assistant coach, we split up who follows which teams in which weekends and stuff. Thankfully, it's very easy to get all the material these days. The world is very small, so you can find the videos and the scouting back and everything. I call and I ask for updates with all of the national team roster players and the Finnish overseas players. Speak to them maybe once every 8 to 10 weeks. We write a little bit, maybe give them a call 3 times a season. Obviously, you're hoping that nothing major happens in terms of an injury.
Yeah.
But on the other side, in terms of their development, it's very limited. You can speak to the coaches, you can ask how they're doing, but you have to remember that the coaches also has a job to do, and their salary and their well-being is based on winning, and they're not going to do you any favors. Their team needs to be working. So it depends on the mentality of the coach and the philosophy of the coach, whether they develop all the players or just the starting players, or how they see a Finnish player in their club. How important are they in the hierarchy of things? And you're a little bit with one arm tied behind your back. And I'm sure that my fellow coaches that have players in my club team would say the same about me. I try and do my best for all my players, but the bottom line is we need to get results, and sometimes you've got to make decisions. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, really. Club coach and national team coach.
Yeah. I guess when we spoke off of the live broadcast about that friction that exists between the constant struggle between club and country. It's a tough balancing act, Joel. It's a really personal approach it. How did you tackle that? Because I'm guessing that there may well be some clubs that have a little bit of friction about the protection of their players when they're going to go with you. So how on that road trip did you manage those difficult conversations?
Yeah, I think that like I said, because I do both, because I'm a club coach, professional club coach, and a national team coach, that you can relate to the club coaches, and that's one of my opening statements is, listen, I know where you're coming from. Like I'm there as well. When are my players, if we've signed guys and they're coming in after a European Championships or a World Championships, or they're being called away for a national team qualification tournament mid-season, for example, if the CEV will organise the qualification for European Championships next summer, it's probably going to be in January. So maybe you've got to forgo some of your players, and that's just the way it is. It's in the international transfer certificate. It's the way it is, and they're your players, and you wish them well. But you have to appreciate that this is that sort of double-edged sword. I try and be human about it and say, okay, it's not our ambition to take your players from the club into the national team, rinse them completely, and then send them back absolutely in pieces, physically broken and not able to play. That's never our ambition. We try and take into consideration the volume and the loading and what we're doing. Something simple, which we've introduced, is to set up a WhatsApp group with each club coach and the power trainer, myself and my assistant coach, and we'll give them updates. So every week we'll send an update. This is the kind of work we've been doing. Your players that are in the national team are ABC. They've been doing this kind of training. They're this kind of fatigue level. So and so's picked up a small injury. We're dealing with it. He's gone for an MRI, just to make sure that the communication is a bit more transparent. And certainly I appreciate that, because other national teams have done that with me. And that's something that I've tried to bring in Finland as well, just to try and increase the communication there.
Awesome. In terms of your squad, there's a range of players playing from, like, say, lower level homegrown club stuff in Finland to guys that are playing pro. So how are you going to try and help some of those guys that maybe need more games, maybe a pro contract? How are you going to try and get those guys to say, right, listen, it may be time to look outside of Finland for some volleyball? How are you going to approach that, Joel?
Well, that's completely changed, and it's completely fallen on its head since coronavirus. The market for pro players is very, very difficult, irrespective of your nationality, because of the financial implications and the footprint that's been left of coronavirus and what it means around the world. You've seen huge shifts in trends in terms of players moving from one country to another. The prices in the market have really dropped significantly. So it's very, very difficult for the players to find teams. That's the reality. It means that for the clubs, it's a buyer's market, that there's players that normally would perhaps fall outside of your pay grade or your salary cap that you can now afford, because they're prepared to take a hit on their wages, because they'd rather have something concrete, or they know the situation in their own country is difficult. So this summer is already proving difficult since February with the transfers and everything. In camp, we try and make the senior players that have been through this process, that are in perhaps higher level clubs, give them a bit more responsibility, also a little bit coaching to take the new guys, the young ones, under their wing, and to perhaps explain a little bit about the philosophy or how we're working, or to give them the benefit of their knowledge. And there's one or two guys that do that really, really well, really embrace that. My libero is top level player, really, really good player. And he takes those young receivers and gives them some tips about, okay, think about this technique, that technique, this situation. One of my middle blockers as well, the same. So we try and encourage that the national team are all in this together, and that we can benefit from people's knowledge, and also run some position-specific stuff. So like we used to do at High Peaks, like get the setters in early. I'm not sure we get them bounding around the 4-meter track doing bunny hops at 10 o'clock at night, but we get them in doing a bit of extra work and a bit of individual work, and that's the beauty of having a camp or a full-time program.
Yeah. I mean, bringing back some memories there, fella. I tell you.
I couldn't walk down the stairs the next morning. My legs were like concrete.
Yeah. Understanding load, eh? I've got a wee question here from Nico. Nico's. I don't think he's missed one of our conversations since we started this in a month. But he's interested about your approach to timeouts. Again, what the conversation sometimes dots like this, Joe. But if you've got a big lead, what are you saying to your team, and how are you managing that?
Yeah,
that question.
That's the dream scenario, that you're up by a bunch and you're in full control. But like we all know, it's a good question. How do you maintain your focus? We talk a lot in Mosaic, especially about standards, about how do we want to play the game? How do we want to be? How can I say, not selling our brand, but like showing our brand of volleyball. So we talk a lot about the kind of standards that we want to have, and you can talk about percentages, about kill ratios or ace ratios. You can talk about the so-called little things like our ability to be organized, our ability to have good solid communication. So we talk a lot when the team needs to refocus. Then some guys, they don't seem to have a problem. They seem to be able just to go along and just play on their level. But it does come up from time to time that you win the first set big, and then the second set perhaps you go a little bit off the boil. If we're up by a lot, I would often refer to the game plan. So this is what we're trying to execute. These one or two specific things that we said ahead of time we wanted to try and exploit with our play, whether that's with serve or with side out, and perhaps also refer to one or two coaching points from in the week. So you might go back to the individual and say, okay, just remember what we said about when you're spiking this ball or when you're defending that zone, just to keep them tuned in. Sometimes it's okay to let the guys take a breath and enjoy the moment if you're winning. But if you feel that we're perhaps on the verge of like snapping out of our concentration, then to reframe, to actually give some solutions. What do you want them to focus on? What do you want them to link into? And it might be, okay, now we want to get that free ball just on the money because we want to practice that particular play we've been working on in practice. We want to run more pipe. We want to make sure we don't take any more block out. Give some specific details to let them again get focused back in.
Yeah, I kind of knowing Nico. He's another one of our coaches on. It's on a learning journey. He's hoping to go in and study psychology. So this is a question that he's a train of thought that he's had. You know, how you're thinking. Again, we covered. It's only 30 seconds, so you're trying to focus in and dial in real neat and tidy on it. We're talking about high level performance and the players that you've got in your club team. You've maybe went out and you've sought a person based on the need of the team. How do you manage the turnover, Joel? You have a guy who suddenly gets elevated and his head turned by another contract at somewhere else. How do you manage that transition? Because we spoke to Steve Florio earlier in the year with the college program. They've got expectations in terms of, okay, if I recruit somebody now, in 4 years' time, I need to have recruited somebody in 2 years' time to fill that gap. So how does that work with pro contracts, and how do you plan for that? Because it's obviously good for you.
Yeah, I think in Mosaic, and I refer back to the club, I said to the club when I took over as head coach that I see the situation. Maybe it's where the club has arrived at. Maybe it's just an indication of where the market is and how volleyball is across the world. But we are, in my mind, a stepping stone club, and I think we should embrace that. I think that the bottom line is that we don't have a huge budget to buy expensive finished article players. Not when you compare to the Italian Championship, Turkish, Polish, Russian, many of the teams that we come up against in Champions League, for example. If we do a good job with the players that we bring in, then most of the time they play themselves into the spotlight, which is good. If they're playing well, it's good for the club and it's good for them. So the players know, because Mosaic has got a solid reputation. It's been going for years. They take very good care of the players. We play Champions League. We play for the prizes in domestic competition. The players come then with the idea that I want to work, I want to improve, and if I do a good job, probably other teams come and do their shopping in Mosaic. So every year we anticipate there's going to be a turnover of players. Now sometimes you bring players in and it doesn't work out for whatever reason. It could be on me, it could be on them, it could be on us. Whatever it is, it happens. But most of the time, the guys want to sign for 1, maximum 2 years. That's like the general. with the idea being that if I do a good job, then I can step up. And we have a number of guys that have made the step up. They've gone from Mosaic to top clubs, and they've done well. And you've got to be happy for them. I think that the bottom line is if someone gets the chance to go and play at another level, whether it's more interesting because of the level, it's the top level, or they're going to double or triple your salary or whatever it is, best of luck to you. Like, go for it. Like, make hay while the sun shines. We want to get the best out of you while you're with us, and then we wish you all the best when you move on. Likewise, for the guys that it doesn't quite click, perhaps it's better you go and play for a different team where you're going to be a starter, or the ambition's different, or you're going to just fit in better. And that's why there's always quite a large turnover in Mosaic. We try and give this environment where the guys can focus 100% on volleyball. We try and improve all our players. We try and give them the opportunity to develop their potential and to arrive at the top level as they can for them. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think that when you look at the work that we do together, that we do our best. And I think that's what you've got to hope for in that stepping stone environment.
Okay, Martin from the staff that you met earlier, he's got one of these dream questions, Joel. If you could go anywhere to coach, which league would it be in which country? Not that we're saying that you've got the choice. Where would you go? What would you
do? Well, firstly, I've fulfilled one of my goals by being a British head coach of a foreign national team. That was one of my goals. I wanted to be coach of Mosaic. I wanted to be coach of a foreign national team. I've achieved that. You can't look past the fact that you want to go and mix it with the top. So for sure, at one stage you want to go to the absolute top, whether that's Italy, whether that's Poland, whether that's Russia, to be able to fight in a good way with the best players, with the best coaches, and try and test yourself at the top level. One of my dream moves on my list, I would love to go to Japan. I would love to work in. I'd love to work in Japan, at club level or national team level. I'm very, very interested in the skills and the culture, the mentality, the way of working. I like very, very much, particularly how the Japanese men's team play the game. I was very fortunate to be in Papendal in Holland last year with Finland, where we played a series of practice games against Holland. And the Japanese women's team were there with a full complement of players, full complement of staff, and they were training on the other 3 courts on the other side of the complex. And I asked, "Is it okay if I just come and take a look, stay in the corner, don't make any noise?" Coach says, "Yep, no problem, go for it." Absolutely amazing. I stood there and I was just in awe of the technique, the technical way they touched the ball control, the focus and concentration was phenomenal. And for me personally, that's something that I'd absolutely love, whether it's for a year, whether it's for longer. At some stage, I'd love to go there and experience that, just to see how and why you arrive with that amount of control and consistency.
Well, a couple of things. My phone's blowing up over here, but I've got Lynn Beattie in the background saying that she loves Japan. Obviously, she's had some experience of being out there, so she says she loves it. And Veronica, one of our staff members, she's came to Scottish volleyball from the Italian Volleyball Federation. She wants to know who's your favourite player at the moment. When you look at the game,
for me, the GOAT absolutely is Coach Kirai. That is the guy. I met him in London. Just like completely lost my words, completely awestruck, dumbstruck. Didn't know what to say. Just like, wow, like my hero. Like, from a player growing up, this is just the best player of all time for me. Like, indoors, the mentality, again, the ball control, the fighting spirit, phenomenal. If I look at the player, you always got to think you've got like your coach's mind and you've got like your volleyball enthusiast mind. And I think from a coach's mind, you've got to go for Leon, right? If you put Leon on your team, then your chances of winning go through the roof, because the serve and the high ball attack, when Leon plays, the necessity to pass the ball perfect just decreases, because he can score on an open ball or a high ball arguably as well as he does in a perfect situation. So that is a guy who revolutionizes the game from an attacking perspective. But of course, there's players that you just really love to watch. You really enjoy watching how they play the game and how skillful they are. And yeah, that's where I think I come back to like Karch. I just love to watch Karch play, like passing the ball, touching the ball. It was a different era of volleyball, and I grew up with volleyball late 80s and through the 90s. But I
Yeah.
think about Karch, absolutely, and right now, yeah, Leon, 100%.
Yeah, when you get a bit of free time, mate, you need to watch back my fanboy interview with him. It was it's an absolute nightmare. We talked about advances in volleyball, and one of the things that we came back to was back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, video technology wasn't great. And we told him about how we watched his left step at training camp.
Yeah,
Like we
yeah,
grew up, like Arch Karai takes a left step, you watch. So
yeah.
that was a bit of a nightmare. Don't suppose you've ever been on Baywatch, mate?
Me?
Yeah, you. Because that was one of my
Not
questions
with
for
this haircut in the sun, mate.
no, man. Ali Jack's come back in with another question. What are the differences in how you delivered your first season in Holland to your most recent season in Belgium in terms of planning and delivery? So, when you first started out, how is it different
Yeah.
from the way you are now?
I think when I first started out, I took a lot of comfort in being uber organized, like to the detail, like your mesocycle, macro cycle. I
Yeah,
like to plan. I have papers here, there, and everywhere. I'm always writing stuff down and study the game. And that hasn't really changed, but I think that I took quite a lot of comfort from the fact that there was a structure there, and that's perhaps how I protected myself a lot. Looking back now, right now I'm still organised. I'm not afraid to step away from my plan. I think I'm a bit more confident in my knowledge of the game, and perhaps I'll go a bit more off piste from time to time if I see something positive or a work point. I'm happy to leave my training plan and perhaps go a little bit off piste there. I would say that one of the messages that I took from a very, very good friend of mine and my manager, Walt Weismans, who was an top player and was my technical director in my first year in Mosaic as head coach, is now I think I'm more demanding. I think I still got a way to go. I think I have high standards, but I think about being more demanding. And I think if I go back to the Joel in 2010, I wouldn't be more relaxed because no, the structure needs to be there. But I think in terms of speaking more with my players, I'd probably do that a bit more, and I would certainly be more demanding and pushing the players in a slightly different way.
yeah. So we recently we've had some changes in journey in terms of the association. And one of the things we went to a professional organisation to see how they work with our academy. And one of the things that we really picked up on was the level of sharing of that plan and the ownership that's put onto the players to learn it,
Yeah.
so that they can execute. How do you go about taking that plan from concept in your head to delivering it with the players? What sort of approaches do you use with that?
Another good question. I think that there's a number of answers here. Really, I think that
Yep.
firstly it would be the players that you have. I think if you look at club level, you got to like really start at the beginning. Like for example, you got a philosophy how you want to play the game, like we spoke about before. How can you bring that over and make it comfortable for your players to understand, in function of their grasp of the language, and of also what they bring. So when you buy a player, you also see something in them or a number of skills in their toolbox that you buy them for. You hope that you can enhance those and help them develop, but you're buying them to do a job. And most of the time, you see certainly how they will contribute to your team. I think in a Finnish national team, that was one of the big challenges for me last year, was the fact that like to gain the trust of the group, to learn about the culture, to understand their needs, and vice versa. Like what how do I communicate? What do they need from me? How do I come across compared to they had a Finnish coach, Thomas, who's now coach of Russia. And Thomas had a long stint with the Finnish team. He was an ex-player, ex-captain for a national team. So has the language, has the culture, knows the players. It's different. Like you need to learn about what they need from you, and then try and impart your message. And I think you need to be flexible. That when I started in 2010, probably had an idea that this was the way. There was a real vision, and it's clear, and that's what we wanted to do. And now I think that with the experience that I've gained over the last years, you want that philosophy, but it needs to be clear. And when I say comfortable, I mean that there needs to be a certain comfort level in the understanding for your players. Complicated isn't better. You can be an amazing coach and cram everything into your 30-second timeout and sound amazing, but if your players can't follow it, don't understand it, or you confuse them, then you're not doing a great job, are you? And I think that's something that I try and take with me. It's what does that group need, and how do I get there with that particular team, whether it's club or country?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to get our guys to understand that process of it's not just I say you do. There's a flexibility in it. Do you have players that are senior within the group that come and put some sort of in-game management ideas where they say, right, listen, I've seen something. What do you think about this? Or what do you approach with that with your players?
Yeah. So absolutely, I think that's something that is, again, as part of today's society. We've got some pretty smart guys in the meeting room with different degrees of experience from different countries, different level of teams, and it's important that it's not just from the top down. Okay, there's moments like in every organisation where you've got to make a judgment call, and this is what we're going to do, and it's my responsibility. Do it, and that's it. But there's plenty of space for contribution from the players. You want the players to be thinking, you want the players to be talking about, oh, in this situation, what about that? So I try and do that. And every year, as your knowledge grows and you feel more confident and comfortable with your players group, you say to, okay, Libero, what's your solution? This guy is making a lot of these kind of plays. How do you see it? What do you think? Do we need to follow this play? Or no, okay, I think if we do this, I can take that zone, and you involve them. And then they're more likely to remember. They're more likely to execute because they have an investment in that plan. And that was a little bit the difficult thing for me last year when I started with the Finnish group in the Golden League. We missed a number of experienced players through injury or needing a break after the season. So we had quite a young group with a new head coach. And then you try and start that with the video meetings and, okay, stop, and what do you guys think? And you want their contribution. But at that stage, they weren't confident and comfortable with speaking in a group about those things. So you think you're trying to develop them and bring them into it, but the situation was that you try and do it with the best idea, but in actual fact, it wasn't helping. So we sort of canned that and went for quite a basic video analysis and a game plan. And then as we developed the relationship and we got to know each other better, players group, setters, receivers, head coach, assistant coach, then you can start to find out what makes them tick and what kind of style they need.
Awesome. So we're coming up towards the end of the conversation, Joe. I know that you're 2 hours ahead, so it's getting fairly late. I'm not going to do what we did with the States. We ran on quite substantially. As per these conversations, we get going and we never want them to end. We've got quite a young group of coaches that are starting out, guys that are really fledgling in their career, and we've got the other side of the scale where guys who have been 30, 40 years in the game. What sort of advice would you give to the younger coach and to the older coach for right now, based on the journey that you've had? What would you be saying to them?
I think I've been very fortunate in the opportunities that volleyball has afforded me. But at the same time, I've also made a hell of a lot of sacrifices. So when sometimes a door opened a little bit, I banged it open and ran through it. And that's been to the detriment of my family. Certainly when the kids were young, I had to give a lot, but I think I've got a lot in return. And I'm very thankful for the support of my wife and children on that, because you need to be pretty single-minded, very, very enthusiastic, and be prepared to get knocked down and keep going. Like I'm talking now about my journey from amateur coach to professional coach. So that's one. It is a tough game. If you're a pro coach, there's a lot of responsibility. It's a pretty tough market out there. There's not a lot of good jobs in terms of not only the practical things, the salary, but also the position where you're at, where you can work as you want to work and you can train a lot, etc., etc. I think that you've got to try and appreciate that the game develops, and that's something that Daniel and I spoke a lot about when I was fortunate enough to work with him that first year in Mosaic, that Daniel always referred to like the Apple iPhone, like version 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, the old sort of updates. And he says, no matter who you are, what level you are, international, club level, you win. You've been winning the last 3 years. You can't stand still. The game moves on, and you need to be a continual student of the game. Now, for me, I think that's something that's relatively easy because, like I said, I'm passionate about volleyball. I love watching it. Watch all levels, all teams, try and learn, speak to other coaches. But I think that the game evolves and develops, and we've been successful with the club. Hopefully we can continue with that. It depends what players you have and what budget you have. There's no doubt about that as well. But you need to roll with the times. You need to try and continue to improve and to upskill, really. In terms of the young coaches, it's not easy. It's not easy coming out of the UK. There's still some stigma attached with being a Brit or a Scot or an English guy or whatever, and being a pro volleyball coach. I had that last year. It was quite funny. One final story. One journalist phoned me when I think we'd lost sort of like 14 games in a row with Finland in all competitions, practice games, a whole lot. And he phoned me up and he gave me a proper grilling. And one of his comments were, when you want to develop a national team football, you hire a Brazilian coach. When you want to develop a national volleyball team, you don't hire a British coach. But I suppose at least you're in Mosaic, so Vital Heine came out of Belgium, so that's one thing in our favour. And I was sort of thank you very much. Take that very, very kindly. But again, that's like compared to how it is in football, that's just like a grain of sand compared to the flack that those guys get. But that's the life. You got to take the rough with the smooth. But if you want to get there and make those steps, it's damn hard. And you've got to get a break somewhere. You've got to, like you said, network and try and get across and see other coaches and see other programs working. But don't think for a minute that personally, I don't ever forget where I started. And when I started coaching, that was pay to play in Belgium, 2 sessions of 2 hours a week. After the Friday session, great team spirit in the bar afterwards in the sports hall, and a game on a Sunday afternoon. And it was great. And I loved every minute of it. But that was how I started. And I used to go to seminars where coaches were talking about training 2 hours in the morning and power and video and all the things that you want to do. But if you've got 2 hours twice a week and they have 20 hours, that's the way it is. You've got to try and keep pushing and try and get there. But it's not easy. You know, you can get there, but it takes a lot of effort.
Brilliant. Well, Joel, I'm conscious we're hitting that 90-minute mark. You're 2 hours ahead. You've stayed up for us, which is fabulous. Problem. When what'll happen is we'll take you backstage into the back end of the studio, and then I'll do a wrap up and we'll come in and we'll say cheerio. Right. I think some of the other staff are going to join you backstage. For me, absolute privilege to talk to you. It's a fabulous way to close our Coach Connections month. We would be delighted if you're ever back on the shore of the UK. If you're about to come up to Scotland, we'd love to have you. It'd be great to catch up face to face. I know that there's a few friends
absolutely. I'd love to. That would be amazing. I'd love to get up there.
Yeah, well, we'll try and make that happen once this travel restrictions and COVID's out of our hair. But again, Joel, thank you. Amazing conversation. The comments that are going through Facebook off the charts. We'll hopefully catch up with you again soon. So everybody, I hope you've enjoyed tonight's session with Joel. Big thanks to him. We're just going to wrap up now. So Joel's going to disappear into the back, and then I'll give you a quick briefing, guys. The month of the Coach Connection month has come to an end. An amazing experience from start to finish. Tomorrow night, the SVA staff are going to go Facebook Live for a debrief on this, and also to promo what's coming up in the next 3 months with Scottish Volleyball in terms of our online presence. It's going to be an opportunity for you guys to chip in as well, to see and steer the delivery that we're going to be looking to deliver for you as members, as volleyball community. So tomorrow night, Facebook Live. I believe that the StreamYard is out there and that it's counting down as we speak. A phenomenal month, amazing Coach Connections, lots of information that was put out there, either on Zoom, on Facebook Live, clear, consistent messages appearing across the conversations, and an absolute pleasure to talk to some of our coaches from the UK and Scotland who are mixing it exceptionally well on the world stage, and not to mention some of the amazing conversations we had with the different federations, Brazil, Belgium, USA and Italy. So a pleasure for me to be able to present these conversations. For some of you, apparently you've saw my face more than you saw your own family. You'll be glad to hear that you'll have your evenings back, but not so much. Tune in tomorrow night and you'll find out what we are going to be doing going forward. For me and everybody at SVA, thank you very much for joining in the Coach Connection series, and hopefully we'll catch up with you soon online. Good night, folks.